Imagine this scene. A woman's in a shower, she's naked, she's washing herself, and a plumber accidentally walks in and sees her. How is she going to respond physically? Well, if she's a Western woman or a European woman, she'll probably cover her breast and cover her crotch. If she's a Muslim woman, she'll probably cover her face, so you don't know who it was you saw. If she's a Samoan woman, she'll cover her navel. So what we're talking about and dealing with here now is cultural differences, how we behave differently from culture to culture. And when I first wrote body language back in the mid-70s, I travelled to 32 countries, and the cultural differences were fairly outstanding. They were remarkable. They're now becoming less and less because of American TV and the movies. American TV and movies teaches kids today how to behave. So you'll see American gestures with all kids under the age of 12. Whereas if you look at their grandparents, you'll still see many of the ancient cultural gestures that maybe have been there for hundreds of years. Now, some of these cultural differences you've probably never considered, but you've probably experienced them. For example, have you ever been to a foreign country where as you walk down the street, you seem to be bumping into everybody? Now, whatever country we live in, we drive on the left or the right. Here in Australia, we drive on the left. In America and Europe, they drive on the right. And we walk on the same side. So if you drive on the left, when you're walking down the street or walking through a crowded shopping centre, you're walking on the left. But if you do that in America or do that in Europe, you'll keep bumping into people. And if you wear dark glasses where they can't see where your eyes are looking to walk, you will bump into everybody. It's a great way of meeting new and interesting people. Now try this cultural test to see what you're like. I want you to hold up your right hand like I'm doing now. Okay, and close it. Now count from 1 to 5 with your fingers. You ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if you're a Westerner, you probably want 1 with the index finger, 2, 3, 4, and the thumb registers 5. If you're a European, Italian or French, for example, you probably went 1 for the thumb, 2, 3, 4, and the little finger registers as 5. Now, these are small but dramatic differences show how cultural differences can affect our perception, because if you're a Westerner and you're doing business with somebody who drives on the right-hand side of the road, or dealing with somebody who lives in, say, France or Italy or Europe, as they start to count out numbers, they say, we want this many. Now, if you're a Westerner, you probably see 2, but they in fact see 3 because they've counted the thumb in it. So when you ask for 2 beers in England, you'll get 2. Ask for this many beers in France, you'll probably get 3. Now, what does vary dramatically, you need to work on and know about? 3 things. First is the amount of eye contact you can use. And this is still very culturally determined. So in Western cultures, for example, which I'm part of Western culture, I live primarily in Australia, when we converse socially, we meet the other person's gaze around 2/3 of the time, and we look away 1/3, back for 2/3, look away 1/3, back for 2/3, look away 1/3. And we look at the other person starting with their right eye and going to the left. In other words, we look at their face from left to right because we write from left to right. Whereas in the Arabic world, they look the opposite way because they write backwards. So what should you do if you go to South America? Well, South America, there are cultural differences and there are gender differences. Oh, shock, horror, gender differences, no, we're all the same now. No, we're not, we're culturally different. And we're gender different still in many ways. In South America, for example, they might only meet your gaze 1/3 of the time, look away 2/3 because it's seen as impolite to look in the eyes. If you go to Japan, where Barbara and I go regularly, meeting new people, they will look away because staring in the eyes is seen as rude or aggressive. Now, if you're not aware of this and you're from a European or maybe a Western country, you're likely to think that person's lying because they're looking away most of the time. Because in your culture, when people start to lie, we know there's a good chance they're going to look away most of the time and look back the least amount of time. Now, in Norway, Sweden, Scandinavia, they'll meet your gaze 80% of the time and look away 20%. So if you're Chinese or South American and you go to Scandinavia, you're likely to think, they're staring you out. Every time you look back, it's friend, he's looking at you, so you look away again. And Swen's thinking, you're not telling the truth, Mr. Chinese person or Mr. Brazilian person. So what do you do about it? How do you cope with these cultural differences? And it's the same thing with touch. The least touching society in Western world are the British. Touching a British person can be seen as a big no-no, especially in business. Yet in Italy and France, if you're not touching someone, they think you don't like them. So what's the key to making it work? Mirror. The amount of touch somebody's giving you in another culture, return it. If you don't, they're likely to think that you don't really like them. So therefore, they won't like you. If you go to places such as Britain, where they're not touching, and you're Italian, for example, if you're not being touched, don't touch. Because if you're touching them, they forget about what you're saying and say, oh, you're onto me, and they don't like it at all. The key is when you go to any foreign country or deal with anybody from another culture, look at what the norm is and copy that. Don't just do what you feel comfortable with. The worst advice you can give somebody travelling abroad is just be yourself. That'll get you put in jail.